It was a bright and crisp morning when Jasmine walked into work. The usual hum of the city already buzzing outside her window. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear as she tied her apron, preparing for another long shift at the small coffee shop in the heart of the city's upscale district. She never imagined that this day, so ordinary, would change everything. The bell over the door jingled as a woman walked in. An older woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun walked slowly, looking around nervously. She was dressed well, in an elegant but understated way, but there was a certain vulnerability to her posture. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" Jasmine greeted, offering a warm smile. The woman smiled back, but her eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty. I'm lost," she said, her voice soft but laced with embarrassment. "I'm trying to get to the park, but I think I've gone the wrong way." Jasmine nodded, recognizing the signs of someone who wasn't used to being in this part of the city. "I can help you," she said. "It's not far from here. I'll show you the way." As they stepped outside, Jasmine carefully explained the directions. The woman thanked her profusely, though she seemed almost hesitant. Something in her eyes caught Jasmine's attention. It was a flicker of recognition, but she brushed it off. She was used to helping people, and it wasn't unusual for someone to be grateful. As they reached the park, the older woman turned to her. "You're very kind, she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's rare to see people like you be so kind to strangers." Jasmine smiled. "It's nothing, ma'am. Just doing my part." The woman nodded, her eyes softening. "I appreciate it more than you know. You have a good heart." Jasmine waved her off. "Have a nice day, ma'am." But just as Jasmine was about to turn back to her cafe, she saw a sleek black car pull up to the curb. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out, Victor Wolf, the billionaire tech mogul who owned several businesses in the area. He was known for his low profile, rarely seen in public, but the rumors about him circulated like wildfire. His name was everywhere. Jasmine hadn't expected to see him here, and she almost didn't recognize him at first. But then she noticed the woman standing next to him, the same elderly lady who had been asking for directions. The older woman embraced him, and he bent down, kissing her cheek gently. Jasmine realized with a shock this was his mother. She had just helped the mother of one of the wealthiest men in the city without even knowing it. Victor Wolf watched Jasmine from across the street. His mother had come to him earlier in the day, telling him about the kind woman who had helped her when she was lost. She had described Jasmine's warm smile, her genuine kindness, and how Jasmine had gone out of her way to assist her without asking for anything in return. He had his private investigators look into her, like he did with anyone who crossed his path in his business dealings, but he wasn't prepared for the level of integrity he found. Jasmine's life was simple, humble even, working long hours at a coffee shop just trying to get by. He saw the same kindness in her as his mother had described, and it made him rethink his approach to life. The next few days passed in a blur for Jasmine. She hadn't expected anything to come from helping a stranger, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Then, one evening, she got a message on her phone. It was from an unknown number, but the message was simple. "I would like to meet with you. Victor Wolf." Jasmine looked at the message on her phone, unsure whether to believe it. Victor Wolf, the tech mogul, the billionaire, wanted to meet with her? She wasn't sure how to feel. A part of her thought it might be some kind of joke, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. She could feel the gravity of the situation, the weight of what this could mean. She stared at the screen for a moment, her mind racing. What could he possibly want with her? Jasmine had never been one to think too highly of herself. She had always believed in the power of kindness, that the world would be a better place if people treated each other with respect. She had learned that lesson from her mother, who had raised her as a single parent in the bustling streets of Brooklyn. Growing up, life had been tough for them. They lived in a cramped apartment, and money was always tight. Jasmine's mom worked long hours as a nurse, but she never complained. She taught Jasmine the value of hard work and empathy. "Be kind to others, Jasmine," her mother would always say. "You never know what someone is going through." A little kindness can change everything. That advice had guided Jasmine throughout her life. It was why she found herself working at a small coffee shop in the upscale part of the city, far removed from her working class roots. Her life wasn't glamorous. The shop wasn't one of the big name brand chains. It was small, personal, and run by a local couple who treated her like family. They couldn't offer her much in terms of salary, but they made sure she always had a place to stay, always had a chance to grow. She had a small group of friends, mostly from the neighborhood, and her social life consisted of long conversations over coffee or dinner in the modest apartment she shared with her mother. There was comfort in simplicity, and Jasmine had always been content with that. She had learned not to crave wealth or luxury. She just wanted to make a difference. But things had changed over the last few months. The cafe had started attracting more business from people like Victor Wolf, the wealthy professionals who worked in the shiny office buildings nearby. They were a world apart from Jasmine's reality, but she couldn't deny the excitement that had built inside her as she watched the shop grow. It wasn't just about the money, it was the validation, the feeling that what she did mattered, that she could contribute to something bigger. Yet, when she thought about her life, her dreams felt far away. She never imagined that someone like Victor Wolf, a man with power, connections, and influence, would ever cross paths with someone like her. He was a fixture of the city's elite, a self-made billionaire who had shaped the future of technology. Her world felt so far removed from his, and the idea that he'd want to meet with her was almost laughable. Jasmine shook her head, trying to focus on the message again. "I would like to meet with you." Victor Wolf. She debated whether to respond. What was the worst that could happen? She could always turn him down. But then another thought crossed her mind. What if this was her big break? She replied, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. "I would be happy to meet. When and where?" The following day, Jasmine found herself standing outside an elegant restaurant downtown, her heart pounding. She had never been to a place like this before. The entire street felt different. Sleek cars parked in front of luxurious buildings, the air filled with an energy of wealth and power. As she waited, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. But she had always been someone who believed in seizing opportunities, no matter how intimidating they seemed. She was about to step into a world she had never known, and she wasn't going to back down. When Victor Wolf arrived, he was exactly as she had imagined. Tall, impeccably dressed, and with an aura of authority that could be felt from across the street. He was accompanied by an assistant, but it was his presence alone that commanded attention. As he approached, Jasmine felt a wave of nerves, but she stood tall, offering a polite smile. "Ms. Thompson," he greeted her with a firm handshake, his voice calm but commanding. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "Of course," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I wasn't sure what this was about, but I'm glad to be here." Victor smiled, a small, knowing smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I know this is unexpected," he began as they sat down at a quiet corner booth. "But I've been following your story and I wanted to reach out. I think you've done something rare. You've shown true kindness in a world where it's in short supply." Jasmine blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't expected such direct praise from someone like him. "Thank you," she replied, still trying to process his words. "I just try to help people, that's all." Victor nodded. "That's why I wanted to meet with you. You helped my mother a few days ago. I'm sure you didn't realize who she was." Jasmine's eyes widened. "His mother? I didn't know," she admitted. "She seemed like a lovely lady, but I had no idea that she's my mother, the matriarch of the Wolf family." "Yes." He smiled again, but this time there was a warmth in his gaze. "I've been watching your actions for some time. You helped her when she needed it most without asking for anything in return. That kind of integrity is rare." Jasmine swallowed. She wasn't sure where this was going, but it didn't feel like a typical business meeting. There was something personal about it. "I wanted to offer you something," Victor continued. "Not because I think you need it, but because I think you deserve it. I know your life hasn't been easy, and I've seen the potential in you to do great things. I want to give you an opportunity to change your life. Jasmine's heart raced. What was he saying? Victor leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. I'm offering you a position at one of my companies, a role where you can help people just like you have helped others. This is more than just a job. It's a chance to make a real difference. Jasmine was stunned. Her mind was racing. She had never imagined this, not in a million years. I don't know what to say, she stammered, completely taken aback. You don't need to say anything yet, Victor said, his smile widening. But consider this. You have the opportunity to not just change your life, but to be the change in the world. I believe you have the heart and vision to lead. Jasmine sat in the sleek, quiet restaurant, her fingers wrapped around the glass of water in front of her, trying to steady her nerves. She had heard Victor's offer, had understood the gravity of it, but it felt unreal. How could someone like her, someone who had spent years working in a small coffee shop, be offered a chance to work with one of the wealthiest, most influential men in the country? The weight of the moment was heavy, the promise of a new life dangling before her. But a part of Jasmine hesitated. This wasn't just about her dream coming true. This was a whole new world she was stepping into, one she didn't understand yet. Could she fit in? Could she succeed in a world of power and privilege that seemed so far removed from her own? Victor, sensing her hesitation, leaned back in his chair, studying her quietly. You don't have to decide now, Jasmine, he said softly. Take your time. But know this, I've seen what you're capable of. I don't extend offers like this lightly. She took a deep breath, trying to find the words. I never expected anything like this, she said, her voice low but steady. I've worked my whole life trying to make a difference, and now you're offering me a chance to change my life, but I'm not sure if I'm the right person for this. I've always been one of the little people. Can I even make a difference in a world like yours? Victor's eyes softened, and his gaze became more intense, more personal. That's exactly why I'm offering this to you. You see things from a perspective that's rare. You don't just see people as tools or assets to be used. You see them as individuals with potential. And I need someone like you in my company. People like you, people with integrity, with heart, are the ones who will change the world, not the ones who think it's all about profits. Jasmine wasn't sure what to say. The idea of stepping into a corporate role like this, of walking into the world of Victor Wolf, felt like stepping into a different universe. I'll think about it, she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty, but it's a lot to take in. I've never been in a world like this before. How do I even begin? Victor smiled, as if he had been waiting for her to say that. Don't worry, I'll be there to guide you, and you'll have time to learn. But I promise you this, Jasmine, you won't be alone in this. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about Victor's offer. She was still working at the cafe, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy in her life while her mind raced with possibilities. She had shared the news with her mother, who was initially stunned but supportive. You've always been a hard worker, Jasmine, her mother had said. You deserve this. Just remember, no matter where you go, don't forget where you came from. Her mother's words rang in her ears as she sat on the subway the next morning, the hum of the train filling her thoughts. The weight of her decision pressed on her. Was she ready for this? Could she really take the step into a world so different from everything she had known? Victor had made it sound easy, like it was just a simple transition. But Jasmine knew it wouldn't be. The world he inhabited was foreign, and she was a stranger in it. How would people like her be received in a company built on power and wealth? The following afternoon, she finally replied to Victor's message. Thank you for the offer. I would like to take you up on it, but I need to know more about what you expect of me and how I can help. This is a big decision, and I want to be sure I'm ready. Victor replied almost immediately. I'll set up a meeting with the team. We'll give you all the information you need. This isn't just about you being a token or a face for diversity. I want you to help shape the company, bring in the change I know is possible. But I need your vision, Jasmine. Don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do. You're in control. That evening, as Jasmine walked home from the cafe, her phone buzzed again. This time, It was a formal invitation for a meeting with the leadership team at one of Victor's companies, Wolf Enterprises, the tech conglomerate he had founded. Her heart raced. This was real. She had to make the decision now. Was she ready to step into a new chapter of her life? The meeting was scheduled for the following week. The moment Jasmine entered the sleek, high-rise office building, she was overwhelmed by the stark contrast between her world and this one. The walls were glass, the floors gleaming marble, and the employees wore suits that seemed like they belonged in a different time and place. She felt out of place, almost as though she didn't belong. But as she stood in the waiting area, her mind racing with doubt, she remembered something Victor had told her. "You're in control." When the door to the conference room opened, Jasmine walked in with her head held high, determined not to let the overwhelming nature of this world swallow her whole. She was here for a reason, and if Victor believed in her, then maybe she could believe in herself, too. As the meeting began, the CEO of Wolf Enterprises, along with the senior executives, introduced themselves. They were cordial, even warm at times, but Jasmine could sense their skepticism. They had no reason to believe a woman who had spent most of her life in a coffee shop could step into their world and lead. Victor, however, was unwavering in his support. He introduced her with a quiet confidence, saying, "Jasmine Thompson is the future of Wolf Enterprises. She is the change we need to move forward. Give her your trust, and you'll see what I see." The first few weeks at Wolf Enterprises were nothing short of overwhelming. Jasmine had stepped into a new world, one that was completely foreign to her, a world of high-powered executives, massive tech ventures, and billion-dollar deals. Every corner of the office seemed to shine with polished glass and steel, a stark contrast to the small coffee shop where she had spent most of her life. Jasmine had known it wouldn't be easy, but nothing had prepared her for how hard it would be to find her place. Despite Victor's assurances, she felt like an outsider, unsure of how to navigate the maze of corporate power players, business jargon, and expectations that were so far removed from the world she had come from. On her first day, she had been introduced to the team, a group of sleek, well-dressed professionals who immediately struck her as too polished, too perfect. They were all brilliant in their own right, but Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that they didn't know what to make of her. She wasn't used to the corporate lingo, the meetings that lasted for hours, or the coldness of the conference rooms that seemed to suck the life out of the air. It wasn't that they treated her poorly. In fact, they were cordial, even respectful. But there was an unspoken distance between her and them. They were the established ones, the ones who had always been in control. And then there was her, someone from a completely different background, trying to prove herself, trying to find her voice in this world of power and privilege. One afternoon, Kara, a senior executive, called Jasmine into her office. Kara was one of the top consultants at Wolf Enterprises, known for her sharp mind and strategic thinking. She had been assigned as Jasmine's mentor, someone to guide her through the rough waters of corporate life. "Jasmine, I've been meaning to talk to you," Kara said as she motioned for Jasmine to sit. "I've noticed you've been keeping to yourself a lot. It's important to speak up in meetings, especially if you want to be taken seriously here. I know this is a big transition for you, but we need to see more from you. Your ideas matter." Jasmine shifted in her chair, uncomfortable. "I just don't want to overstep," she said. "I'm still trying to figure out how things work around here." Kara smiled, but it was one of those tight smiles that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, we're all still figuring things out, but you'll never make an impact if you don't speak up. You're here because Victor believes in you. Don't waste that trust." As the days wore on, Jasmine began to feel the pressure mounting. Her doubts grew, making it harder to shake the feeling that she wasn't really supposed to be here. Everyone else seemed to know exactly what to do, how to act, and how to talk the talk. She was constantly playing catch-up, always trying to decipher the layers of politics that lay beneath every conversation, every decision. In meetings, she spoke when asked, but her voice often felt small against the backdrop of corporate giants around her. Her contributions were met with polite nods, but they never seemed to carry weight. She was struggling to make a mark, to show that she deserved the position she had been given. And then came the project. Victor assigned her to lead a new initiative, one that was meant to change the way Wolf Enterprises operated, an ambitious idea that would change their approach to social responsibility. The project was a chance for Jasmine to prove herself. It was her opportunity to show that she wasn't just there to fill a diversity quota, but that she was capable of doing great things. But as the team gathered in the conference room to discuss the project, Jasmine's nerves got the better of her. Victor had given her the floor. He believed in her. He had told her this in private, but the pressure was beginning to mount. As she stood in front of the team, her palms were sweaty and her heart was racing. She had prepared for this meeting, but standing there, with the eyes of some of the most powerful people in the company on her, she faltered. She stammered, We'll be focusing on the corporate social responsibility aspect, using our company's reach to positively impact communities. But, I also think we should. Jasmine, Victor's voice interrupted her, calm but firm. Let's focus on the specifics. What's your strategy for the initial phase of the project? Jasmine's mind blanked. She had rehearsed her pitch. She had the numbers, the strategies, the details. But in front of Victor, she found herself floundering, unsure how to present herself as the leader she needed to be. Her face flushed, and for a brief moment, the room felt like it was closing in on her. The silence from the team only heightened her sense of inadequacy. She forced herself to take a breath, trying to regain control. I think it's important to engage with the community first, she began again, her voice more steady now. We need to focus on grassroots initiatives. I've identified a few key partnerships that align with our company values, and we'll build from there. It's about giving back not just through donations, but through sustained involvement. She could see Victor's eyes on her, scrutinizing every word. When she finished, he nodded. Well said, Jasmine, he said, though there was an edge to his tone, one that left her feeling unsettled. But let's be clear, action speaks louder than words. I need results, not just ideas. As the meeting ended and everyone filed out of the room, Jasmine felt the weight of Victor's words settle on her. Was she failing already? Her heart pounded as she sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen. She had been given the opportunity of a lifetime, but now she was terrified of failing. Later that evening, Jasmine received another message from Victor. Meet me in my office at 8 p.m. Jasmine's stomach churned. What did he want now? Jasmine walked to Victor's office, her steps slow and measured, each one heavy with doubt. The air in the building felt colder as she passed through the sleek hallways. She had spent the day second-guessing herself, replaying the meeting over and over in her mind, wondering if she had said the wrong thing, if she had missed the opportunity to truly lead. Victor's office was just as impressive as she remembered. Tall glass windows, a view of the city's skyline, and modern, minimalist decor that screamed wealth and power. She stood at the door for a moment, gathering her composure before knocking softly. Come in. Victor's voice called from within, low and controlled. Jasmine opened the door and stepped inside. Victor was sitting at his desk, reviewing papers, his posture straight and commanding. He didn't look up immediately, giving Jasmine a few moments to stand there and settle into the space. Have a seat, Jasmine, he finally said, motioning to the chair in front of him. His voice was calm, almost soothing, but there was an edge to it that made her feel uneasy. Jasmine sat down, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to steady her breath, but it felt like the weight of the entire world was pressing down on her. She had worked so hard to get here, but now, in this moment, she felt like she was about to lose everything. I've been reviewing the project proposal, Victor said after a long pause. He leaned forward, looking directly at her. And I'm not happy with what I saw today. The ideas were fine, Jasmine, but there was no follow-through. No tangible plan to execute the vision. No commitment to making it real. You can't just give ideas. You have to deliver. Jasmine swallowed hard, her stomach twisting with the growing fear that she wasn't cut out for this role. I thought the initial phase was the most important step. I was laying the foundation. Victor didn't seem impressed. The foundation is important, but we need more than that. I gave you this opportunity because I believe in your potential, but I can't have you just spinning your wheels. You've been here long enough now, Jasmine, and I need to see results. I need to know that you can handle this responsibility. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? How could she explain the pressure she was under, the constant fear that she would fail, that she didn't belong here in the first place? She had come from a completely different world, and now she was expected to succeed in a space where everything was so unfamiliar, so intimidating. Victor noticed her hesitation. His eyes softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. I'm not going to lie to you, Jasmine. This is hard. I know that, but I can't keep holding your hand. Either you rise to the challenge or you don't. The words hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't the threat of being fired that scared her. It was the crushing realization that maybe she wasn't good enough for this world after all. I don't know if I can do this, Jasmine finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've spent my life working so hard just to get by. I've never been part of a world like this before. I'm not sure I can handle it. Victor was silent for a moment, studying her carefully. Then, to her surprise, he leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. Jasmine, it's not about fitting in. It's about bringing your uniqueness to the table. It's about using your perspective to create something new, something that hasn't been done before. You've been through more than most people can imagine. You've got something that the rest of these people don't have, the heart to make a difference. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. Heart? It was the one thing she had always trusted, her ability to care, to show kindness, to fight for what was right. But could that be enough in a world that ran on profits and power? Victor continued, his voice steady and resolute. You are more than capable of this. But you have to believe in yourself. If you want to make this work, if you want to succeed, you have to push through your doubts. I'm not going to do this for you. But I'll be here when you're ready to fight for it. And I know you can. Jasmine sat there, absorbing Victor's words. She had been afraid that she wasn't cut out for this life, that she was only ever meant to be an outsider in a world of privilege. But now he was giving her a chance to prove herself, to rise above the doubts that had held her back for so long. Victor stood up, walking over to the window. He looked out at the city, the vast skyline stretching before them. I didn't get to where I am by letting fear dictate my actions. I made mistakes, I stumbled, but I kept pushing forward. You can do the same. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Jasmine felt a spark of something inside her. Maybe this wasn't just a test of her skills, it was a test of her will, of her belief in herself. Maybe, just maybe, this was her moment. Victor turned back to her, his eyes meeting hers. Take some time. Think about it. But know that the opportunity is yours. It's time for you to decide who you're going to be. As Jasmine left the office that evening, the weight of the conversation sat heavily on her shoulders. But for the first time in days, she felt a shift inside her. It was time to rise. The next few days after her conversation with Victor felt like a blur. Jasmine's mind was racing with the weight of his words. She had been offered a chance that many could only dream of. She had always known that life wasn't fair, but now, for the first time, she had an opportunity to change her own destiny. But it was still hard to believe that someone like her, someone who had always been on the outside, could truly belong in this world. She spent the next week pouring herself into the project, carefully crafting the strategy and the vision that Victor had wanted for her. This was her chance to prove herself, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. She worked late into the night, her eyes straining from the hours spent staring at her computer screen, but she kept pushing. She couldn't afford to fail, not now. The morning of the next big presentation, Jasmine stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, adjusting the collar of her blouse, her hands trembling slightly. She had always dressed modestly, her wardrobe a mix of affordable clothes from discount stores and hand-me-downs from her mother. But today she had bought something new. A tailored suit, one that made her feel as though she could finally fit in, that she could hold her own in a room full of billionaires and executives. As she walked into the office, she felt a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time in days, she didn't feel like a fish out of water. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. This was her time. She was going to show them who she was. The conference room was filled with executives, men and women who had worked at Wolf Enterprises for years, some of them longer than she had even known of its existence. They all turned to look at her when she entered, their gazes evaluating, questioning. She was the outsider, the newcomer, the one who had only just begun to climb the ladder. Victor stood at the head of the table, watching her carefully. He hadn't said much to her after their last meeting, and she could feel the weight of the expectation hanging over her. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. She set down the folder with her notes. In front of her, the presentation slides ready to go. "Jasmine, I trust you have the plan ready?" Victor asked, his voice calm but purposeful. She nodded, feeling the pressure but pushing through it. "Yes, I've outlined the first phase of the Corporate Social Responsibility Project. It focuses on community engagement and sustainable partnerships with local organizations, which aligns with the company's values." As she went through her presentation, laying out the details of her plan with confidence, she could see the others listening intently. There was a subtle nod here and there, and Jasmine felt a flicker of hope rise inside her. This could be it. This could be the turning point she had been waiting for. But then, halfway through, something changed. Victor's expression shifted slightly. He raised his hand, signaling for Jasmine to stop. "Hold on a second. You've presented a great plan, Jasmine," he said. "But I'm curious. How are you going to ensure that this actually translates into measurable impact? How are you going to show us that this won't just be another charity initiative that fades into the background?" Jasmine froze for a moment. She had anticipated difficult questions, but this one hit harder than the others. She thought she had thought of everything: community metrics, follow-up reports, outreach programs. She had expected a few questions about implementation, but this one felt different. This was a challenge to her core belief that good intentions and action could create real change. She had never thought of it as just a numbers game. But in this world, it seemed that was exactly what it was. She took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. I believe we can use qualitative and quantitative measures," she started, her voice more confident now. "We'll track volunteer hours, community satisfaction, and long-term outcomes, but the key is sustainability. This is about creating lasting change, not short-term fixes." Victor nodded, and for a moment, it seemed like the meeting would continue smoothly. But then, to her surprise, he asked another question, one that completely shifted the course of the discussion. "Jasmine, do you know who's been watching this entire process?" he asked, his tone suddenly more direct. "Do you know who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes?" Jasmine blinked. What did he mean? "I don't understand," she replied, her voice cautious. Victor leaned back in his chair, the light from the city skyline reflecting off the glass behind him. "I don't think you do. The thing is, Jasmine, you've been working under a lot of pressure, and I get that. But the thing you don't know is that I've been watching you for months. I knew you before you knew me." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I saw what you did when you helped my mother that day," Victor said, his gaze unwavering. "And I've been watching everything since then. Your character, your integrity, your humility, all of it. I knew that you were more than just a kind-hearted woman from a coffee shop. I knew you had the potential to do great things." Jasmine's mouth went dry. Victor had known all along. He knew about her background, about the person she was before she stepped into this world. He smiled slightly, reading her confusion. "I wanted to see what you would do with the opportunity one gave you, Jasmine. I wanted to see if you would rise to the challenge, and you have. More than that, you've surpassed my expectations." Jasmine felt a rush of emotion flood over her. She had spent so much time second-guessing herself, so much time wondering if she belonged here, and now it all made sense. Victor had seen something in her before she even knew it was there. He had believed in her when she hadn't believed in herself. Victor stood up from his chair, extending his hand to her. Jasmine, you're ready for what's next. You've earned this. You've earned the right to lead. Let's make this project not just a success, but a statement to the world about what Wolf Enterprises stands for. Jasmine took his hand, her heart pounding with disbelief and gratitude. She had done it. She had risen above the doubt, the fear, and the uncertainty, and now she was ready to take her place, not just as an employee, but as a leader. Jasmine walked out of the meeting feeling a sense of triumph, but there was no time to bask in the moment. The real work was only just beginning. Victor had given her a chance to prove herself, but now she had to deliver. The expectations were higher than ever, and the weight of them was heavier than she had ever imagined. Her new role at Wolf Enterprises was hers now, and Jasmine was expected to lead the corporate social responsibility project. The task seemed daunting, but she had learned that there was no turning back. She wasn't just an outsider anymore. She was part of something bigger. But with that role came scrutiny, and the pressure was building. The first challenge came the following week, when the project team met to discuss the next steps. The group, which consisted of senior executives and department heads, was looking to Jasmine for leadership, but it was clear that not everyone was on board with the idea of having a relatively new hire leading such an important initiative. Jasmine, I have to be honest with you, Kara, one of the senior executives, said during the meeting. I'm still not sure that the strategy you've proposed is grounded enough. We need to know that this project is going to deliver measurable results, not just ideas. Jasmine felt the weight of Kara's words. It wasn't the first time she had been questioned, but something about Kara's tone made her feel exposed. Kara wasn't just skeptical, she was dismissive, and Jasmine could feel the tension in the room as others waited for her to respond. She swallowed, trying to keep her composure. The project is focused on long-term community engagement, she said, her voice steady but betraying a hint of frustration. We're not just looking for short-term results. This is about creating lasting change, not just meeting quarterly targets. But the room didn't seem convinced. Jasmine's mind raced, and for a moment she felt the familiar doubt creep in, the same doubt that had plagued her before. Was she ready for this? Was her vision enough to convince the people around her that this project could succeed? As the meeting ended, Victor pulled her aside. Don't let them get to you, he said quietly, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable authority. You know what you're doing. Just stick to your plan. Jasmine nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in her stomach. She had been given the reins, but now it felt as though the very people who had once supported her were starting to doubt her. That afternoon, Jasmine sat at her desk, staring at the numbers on her laptop screen. She had prepared the budget for the next phase of the project, but as she reviewed it, her thoughts kept drifting back to Kara's words. Measurable results, quantifiable impact. Were these really the things that mattered? Or was there something more she was missing? As the hours passed, Jasmine found herself growing more frustrated, her confidence slipping away. She wasn't just fighting for the success of the project, she was fighting for her place in this world. She had always been the outsider, always had to prove herself. Now, in this room full of powerful people, was she really ready to lead? The next day, Victor called her into his office. You look a little worn out, he remarked, his voice gentle but knowing. Is everything okay? Jasmine took a deep breath. She wanted to be honest, but she didn't want to seem weak. It's just a lot, Victor. There are so many expectations, and I feel like I'm not being taken seriously. Victor studied her for a moment, his eyes sharp. What's really bothering you? Jasmine hesitated, then spoke the words that had been weighing on her. I'm trying to change things, but I feel like I'm up against a wall. The people here don't understand where I'm coming from. They want results, not vision. They want numbers, not change. Victor leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. You know that's not true. They're just scared of real change. They've never seen someone like you come in and challenge the status quo. You're doing exactly what this company needs, creating something lasting, not just throwing a Band-Aid on it. Jasmine's throat tightened, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always felt that her background, her authenticity, her passion for real change was something that would help her succeed. But now, she was beginning to see that this was also what made her a target. Her differences were becoming a source of resistance. People didn't like change, especially when it threatened their comfort. "I can't let them win," she whispered, more to herself than to Victor. "I can't go back to being invisible." Victor nodded. "No, you can't. And you won't. I believe in you, Jasmine. But now it's time to show everyone else why you belong here. Don't give them the chance to doubt you." That night, Jasmine lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The weight of what Victor had said was clear. She wasn't just fighting for a seat at the table. She was fighting for the future. But as she thought about the challenges ahead, one thing became clear. This battle wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about proving that someone like her, someone who had always been on the outside, had a place at the top. The next morning, as she prepared for another round of meetings, Jasmine made a decision. She was done letting her doubts hold her back. She wasn't going to let the fear of failure stop her from doing what she knew was right. It was time to step up, not just for the project, but for herself. She walked into the meeting room with renewed purpose. The room fell silent as she began to speak, her voice firm and confident. The time for second-guessing was over. The days that followed Jasmine's shift in attitude were filled with action. She threw herself fully into the project, bringing the vision she had for Wolf Enterprises' social responsibility initiative to life. She fine-tuned every detail, coordinated with the various departments, and engaged with the community partners who would be key to the program's success. It wasn't easy. She encountered resistance at every turn, from some executives who still viewed her with skepticism to the internal struggles she had in maintaining her own confidence. But as the days passed, the walls began to break down. Jasmine's plan was starting to take shape, and with each new success, her confidence grew. The project, Building Bridges, was designed not just to donate money to communities in need, but to create sustainable, long-term partnerships that would allow communities to thrive. On their own, Jasmine's vision was clear. The company wasn't just a financial donor, it was a partner in growth, helping to build stronger foundations for future generations. One afternoon, as she walked into the conference room for the monthly board meeting, Jasmine could feel the difference in the air. The executives weren't just polite anymore. They were paying attention. Victor sat at the head of the table, his usual calm demeanor as steady as ever. But today, there was a new energy about him. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Jasmine, there was a look of pride. As the meeting began, Jasmine stood up, her notes in hand, ready to present the next phase of the Building Bridges project. She had spent weeks preparing, and the numbers were now in her favor. Her strategy was working. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine began, her voice confident, yet calm, "I'd like to share the results of the first phase of our project. We've successfully launched 3 community partnerships in neighborhoods that have been historically underserved. These programs have already begun to yield measurable results. With over 500 volunteers engaged, more than 1,000 families supported, and positive feedback from the local leaders we're working with." There were murmurs of approval from the room, and Jasmine could feel her confidence rising as she continued. "We've also seen a 15% increase in employee engagement within the company as our staff feels more directly connected to mission. This isn't just a win for the communities we're helping, it's a win for Wolf Enterprises. We're leading by example, showing that social responsibility isn't just a buzzword, but a core value that we can deliver on." When she finished, there was a long pause. For the first time, the room wasn't filled with skeptical glances or whispered doubts. Instead, the board members were nodding, impressed by the results. Victor was the first to speak. "I've been following the progress, and I have to say, I'm impressed, Jasmine. You've exceeded all expectations. This is exactly what I envisioned when I offered you this role." Jasmine's heart swelled. This was the moment she had been waiting for, not just the recognition she had hoped for, but the validation that she truly belonged here. We're looking at expanding this initiative to 5 more cities by the end of the year, she continued, her voice steady. I believe we can make a national impact, but we'll need the full support of the leadership team to get there. The board exchanged glances, and then one of the senior executives, Mark, spoke up. Jasmine, I'll be honest. I had my doubts when this started, but looking at the numbers, looking at what's been accomplished, I think you've shown us something truly valuable here. By the time the meeting ended, it was clear. Jasmine was no longer the outsider. She was a leader in Wolf Enterprises, her impact undeniable. She had proven herself, not just through her ideas, but through real, measurable change. Her leadership was no longer questioned, it was embraced. Later that evening, Jasmine sat at her desk, reviewing the data from the meeting. The numbers were good, better than she could have hoped for. She had done it. She had succeeded. But as she sat there, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Victor standing in the doorway, a small smile on his face. You did well today, he said, walking into the office. I know it wasn't easy, but you've shown everyone your worth. Jasmine smiled back, though the weight of the past few weeks still hung on her shoulders. I couldn't have done it without your support, she replied. I was so afraid of failing, of not fitting in. But you kept believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Victor nodded, his eyes softening. That's what leadership is, Jasmine. It's about pushing through the doubts and showing others what's possible. And you've done just that. But I want to tell you something that might surprise you. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. What is it? Victor took a seat across from her, his gaze steady. I've been watching you for a long time. You're not just here to manage this project. You're here to change the future of this company. I've seen that in you from the moment you helped my mother. I knew you had the ability to bring about real change, and that's why I pushed you. But now, I think it's time you start thinking bigger. Jasmine felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean? Victor's voice lowered, almost conspiratorial. I'm offering you something more than just this role. I want you to be part of the leadership team to help shape the future direction of Wolf Enterprises. You've earned it, Jasmine. You deserve to be at the table. Jasmine's heart raced. She had always dreamed of being part of something bigger, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Are you serious? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor smiled, standing up. I've never been more serious. You've already proven yourself. Now it's time to lead. Welcome to the team, Jasmine. As Victor left her office, Jasmine sat there for a long time, letting the weight of his words sink in. She had come so far, from a girl working at a coffee shop to becoming a leader in one of the most powerful companies in the country. She had earned this. The next few weeks after Victor's offer felt like a blur for Jasmine. She was officially part of the leadership team now. Her role was not just about managing the community initiative anymore. She was stepping into a broader, more powerful space within Wolf Enterprises, one where her ideas could reshape the company for the ground up. At first, the shift felt almost surreal. She sat in meetings with high-level executives discussing long-term strategies, growth, and acquisitions. She had come a long way from her humble beginnings, from serving coffee to the executives to sitting at the table with them. But as much as she was immersed in the responsibilities of her new role, something inside her never lost sight of why she had come here in the first place, to make a real difference, to create lasting change, not just for the company, but for the people it affected. Her first major project within the leadership team was a company-wide initiative to revamp Wolf Enterprises' corporate culture. While the social responsibility program had been a success, Jasmine knew that true change had to start within the company itself. There were still echoes of the old guard, the same skepticism and resistance she had faced at the beginning, even from some of her colleagues who had been at Wolf Enterprises for years. Jasmine's vision was simple: a culture where every employee felt heard, valued, and empowered, not just at the top, but at every level. She wanted to create a company where diversity and inclusion were embedded in the very DNA of its operations. Her first step was to introduce a series of workshops on unconscious bias, leadership development, and creating safe spaces for employees to share their ideas without fear of judgment. But like everything else, it wasn't going to be easy. The senior executives, many of whom had been with Wolf Enterprises for decades, were initially skeptical. "Jasmine, I understand the need for diversity," Kara said one afternoon, her arms crossed as she leaned against the conference table. "But we need results. You're asking us to change the entire culture, and frankly, I'm not sure it's going to move the needle." Jasmine remained calm, her gaze unwavering. "Results will come, Kara. But the real change is in the culture. When people feel respected, when they know their voices matter, they're more engaged. That leads to better performance. This is an investment in our future." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Jasmine wasn't just talking about statistics or metrics, she was talking about human dignity. She had seen firsthand how the lack of respect for others could tear down potential, both in people and in companies. She wasn't going to let that happen at Wolf Enterprises, not on her watch. As the weeks passed, Jasmine's initiative began to take root. The workshops, the leadership sessions, and the new focus on employee engagement slowly began to shift the company's culture. People started coming forward with ideas, with concerns, and with solutions. They felt heard, and that made all the difference. Jasmine had made her mark. But she wasn't content with just changing the internal culture. She wanted to change the entire industry. Wolf Enterprises had always been a leader in tech, but Jasmine's focus was on showing that the way forward was through people-first values. Values that placed equal importance on employee well-being, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability. She pushed for Wolf Enterprises to invest in renewable energy projects, to partner with nonprofits that focused on education and economic development, and to become a model for ethical business practices. One evening, as she sat in her office reviewing progress reports, the phone on her desk rang. It was Victor. "You've been doing great work, Jasmine," he said, his voice warm. "The changes I'm seeing are incredible. But there's one thing I've noticed in particular. You're not just shaping the future of this company, you're shaping the future of this entire industry." Jasmine smiled, but she knew the real work was still ahead. "I'm just getting started, Victor. There's so much more to be done." "I know," he replied, "but I'm proud of you. You've earned your place here. And not just here. Asterisk, asterisk, you've earned your place as a leader who will be remembered for years to come. You're leaving a legacy, Jasmine." That night, as Jasmine stood at her office window, looking out at the city below, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. She had built something real, something that would outlast any project or promotion. She had created a culture of inclusivity, respect, and accountability at Wolf Enterprises, and that culture was starting to influence other companies, too. In the following months, industry leaders began reaching out to her, asking for advice on how they could replicate what Jasmine had done. She became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story and vision at conferences and workshops, speaking not just to tech companies, but to industries across the board. Her name was becoming synonymous with corporate transformation. But more than that, her story was becoming a beacon for anyone who had ever felt like they didn't belong in a world that seemed to favor the powerful. One evening, as Jasmine sat at dinner with her mother, the woman who had always believed in her, the weight of her journey hit her fully. She had come from nothing, worked hard for everything, and faced every obstacle with the belief that kindness and integrity were more powerful than power itself. Her mother reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You've come so far, Jasmine, but I always knew you could do it." Jasmine smiled, the warmth of her mother's words settling in her heart. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You've always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Her mother nodded. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We always see what's in our children long before they see it in themselves." Jasmine sat back in her chair, looking at the world around her with a new sense of fulfillment. She had done more than just build a career. She had built a legacy, one that would last far beyond the walls of Wolf Enterprises. And as she looked to the future, Jasmine knew that her work was far from over. There was always more to do, more people to empower, more lives to change. But now, she was ready for whatever came next. The ripple effect of Jasmine's work at Wolf Enterprises was undeniable. What started as a single social responsibility initiative had evolved into a movement that spread across industries as more and more people became aware of the company's transformation. Thanks to Jasmine's leadership, the demand for her ideas and insight skyrocketed. It wasn't just Wolf Enterprises that benefited. Jasmine's vision began to influence the entire corporate landscape. Companies that had once only paid lip service to diversity and inclusion were now looking to implement the strategies she had pioneered. Nonprofit organizations reached out, eager to learn from the partnerships she had formed between Wolf Enterprises and local communities. Jasmine was invited to speak at national conferences, appearing alongside some of the most respected voices in business, tech, and social change. She became a sought-after consultant, not just in the business world, but in education, healthcare, and other sectors. Her story was no longer just about Wolf Enterprises. It was about how a woman who had started with nothing had turned the corporate world upside down by simply refusing to settle for the status quo. One day, as Jasmine prepared for another speech, this time at a major global conference in New York City, she paused, taking a moment to look at the invitation in her hands. She had always imagined herself in the audience, listening to the voices of those who had inspired her. Now, she was the one standing in front of the crowd, sharing her message with the world. The conference hall was filled with thousands of people from around the globe, all eager to hear the woman who had changed the game. As she stepped onto the stage, the applause was deafening. She felt the weight of the moment, but she also felt something else: empowerment. She was no longer the outsider, the person questioning her place in a world of power and privilege. She had earned her place at the table, and now she was using that platform to help others do the same. As she spoke to the crowd, her words were clear and steady. It's easy to talk about change. It's easy to say the right things, to have the right policies on paper. But real change comes when we take the first step, when we stop talking about diversity and inclusion and start living it every day. It comes when we don't just say that everyone deserves an opportunity, but when we create those opportunities for people who have been excluded for too long. That is what we need: a future where everyone has a seat at the table. The room erupted in applause. Jasmine smiled, but she knew that the work wasn't over. It never would be. She wasn't just speaking to a room of people. She was speaking to the future, to the change she wanted to see in the world. As her speech came to an end, Jasmine walked off the stage to a sea of people waiting to speak with her. They asked questions, offered their congratulations, and shared stories of how her work had inspired them. It was overwhelming, but it was also rewarding, because for every person who shared their gratitude, Jasmine felt the weight of her impact. She was changing the world, not just with her ideas, but with her actions. After the conference, the media began to take notice. Major outlets interviewed her, and articles about her journey started to appear in newspapers, magazines, and on digital platforms. Jasmine was hailed as a pioneer, a leader who had proven that businesses could thrive while doing good. But while the accolades were pouring in, Jasmine remained grounded, never forgetting the struggles that had shaped her journey. One evening, as she sat at her desk at Wolf Enterprises, reviewing some of the press clippings, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Victor. "You've done it. The company is thriving, and the impact you've had goes beyond what I imagined. But remember, it's never been about the accolades. It's about the change you've created." Jasmine smiled at his words, knowing that he was right. She had been recognized, but the recognition had never been the end goal. The goal had always been change, lasting, meaningful change that would ripple through the industry, through society, and through the generations to come. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her mother. "I saw you on TV. I'm so proud of you, Jasmine. You've always had it in you." Jasmine's heart swelled as she read the message. Her mother had been the first person to believe in her, the one who had always pushed her to keep going, even when the world told her it wasn't possible. She had made it. Jasmine stood up from her desk, looking out of the large windows of her office. The city stretched before her, filled with opportunities and challenges. She had come so far from where she started, but she knew the journey wasn't over. There were more battles to fight, more lives to impact, and more people to empower. And as the city lights twinkled below her, Jasmine knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The world was responding, and she was ready to lead it forward. Months had passed since that first moment of uncertainty, since the days when Jasmine had questioned whether she was truly cut out for this world. Her journey had been long and full of struggles, but it had also been filled with moments of triumph that had shaped her into the leader she was now. Sitting at her desk, Jasmine gazed out of the large windows of her office at Wolf Enterprises. The city sprawled beneath her, its lights flickering like the stars of her dreams. She had come a long way from the days when she had worked at the coffee shop, unsure of where her life was headed. Now, she was at the helm of a movement not just about business success, but about making the world a better place. But despite all her achievements, there was a quietness in her heart, a peaceful certainty that came from within. She wasn't just proud of her success in the boardroom. It was the impact she had made in the lives of others that meant the most. As the phone rang, snapping her from her thoughts, Jasmine picked it up, recognizing the number. It was Victor. "You've done it, Jasmine." His voice came through the line, warm but measured. "The company is at a new place. Your leadership has transformed Wolf Enterprises in ways I couldn't have imagined." Jasmine smiled, feeling the weight of his words. "It hasn't been easy, Victor, but it's been worth it." "I knew you had it in you," he said. "You didn't just change the company. You've changed the industry. The world is watching, and you're leading the way." Jasmine paused, reflecting on how much had changed. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into Wolf Enterprises months ago. The insecurities, the doubts, they had melted away, replaced by a deep-rooted confidence. She had built something that would last, but as much as she had done for the company, what resonated most with her was the countless emails, messages, and letters she had received from people all over the world. Young women, minorities, people who had once felt excluded. They were inspired by her journey. Jasmine had always believed in the power of kindness, but now she saw how it could ripple outward, creating change far beyond what she had ever imagined. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Jasmine walked out onto the balcony of her office. The cool breeze brushed against her skin as she looked out over the skyline, taking in the view that had once seemed so distant, so unreachable. As she hung up the phone, Jasmine felt a surge of pride fill her chest. She had done it. She had earned her place at the table, and now she was helping others find their seats at it too. Later that evening, Jasmine stood in front of her mirror one last time. She looked at the woman staring back at her, the woman who had faced every obstacle and turned it into an opportunity. She had become the leader she had always dreamed of being. She smiled softly as a final thought crossed her mind. The future is mine to shape, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. With that, she turned away from the mirror and stepped into the future, ready to continue her work and to inspire countless others along the way. Final line. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't the ones we achieve for ourselves. They're the ones we help others achieve, too.